J.D.Sage, welcome to the Maple Leaf Mailbag.
Thanks very much for having me.
Now, J.D., tell me about this Strings for Cuba program.
Well, as you know, I'm a troubadour, and I was actually recording in Agram Studios, which is of Bonavista Social Club fame. And at the end of my sessions there, I gave away the strings that I had to local musicians. And I've gone back to Cuba like maybe 10 times since then. And bit by bit, I did radio interviews. And this journalist told me, look, instead of giving the strings on the street, give them to the Museo Nacional de la Música. And they will make sure that they're distributed to colleges and schools, and they won't go directly onto the black market. So you got to know that strings, like violin strings and guitar strings, bass strings in Cuba are rare and very expensive. They cost about a day's wages to get a guitar string.
Just one string?
One string.
Wow.
All right, so like they don't get paid a lot, and there's an embargo, and for such a musical country, it seemed ridiculous to me that they couldn't play. I saw some people playing guitars with 4 strings and things like that, or they put shark line on to replace the strings. So it was ridiculous. It's a very, very good musical place. I have a lot of respect for Cuban musicians and music, and they have a very interesting blend of Andalus and African rhythms, and there was also a French influence among them on the troubadour scale. So they're great musicians, they're serious, and they're good, and I couldn't believe they wouldn't be getting strings. So bit by bit, I talked to a couple of luthiers here in Montreal, and I said, could you collect recyclable strings or new strings? And J.D.Sage, who does classical instruments, gave me many brand new violin strings and cello strings. And Jimmy's Music is in the west end of Montreal, and they're rockers, and they collect electric strings, bass strings, and acoustic strings, and we've been shipping them for years. But the thing is that, I'm doing it on my own, and I can tell you that every 5 kilos of strings that we send there, it really is distributed to colleges and schools. And so, I thought it was a good cause, and the more people know about it, the better, because it's very important for the new generation of Cuban musicians.
And say a music school, or I'm thinking of, there are all kinds of university music programs, or somebody listening wanted to get a group together to do what you're doing. So they would send strings to the musée?
Yeah, Museo Nacional de la Música. It's 509 Obra Pia in Havana. And the director of that museum, by the way, is Senor Gomez Cairo, and he's a famous musicologist. And I speak to him regularly, and I know that they're all really serious and honest people. And any kind of string is excellent right now. Now, let's hope that in a few years things won't be the same anymore. But for now, it's true, and I think it's a dreadful thing.
And this is something that's fairly easy to do. I was thinking of another well-known Canadian musician, Vic Vogel, who takes actual instruments to Cuba, but that's quite an involved process. Sending strings is something, anyone could do.
Yes, it's pretty easy to do. And some people who go to Cuba also can bring them with them. And they don't need new strings, but there's a lot. The luthiers will tell you that a lot of the strings are still reusable. We're just a cleaning, and they high grade them for us so that we send them all very usable stuff. And I can tell you a number of musicians buy packs of strings and shove them into the Cuba box. So it's really from Montreal musicians to Cuban musicians.
Terrific, J.D. Now, how long have you been doing this?
Well, to about 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I just sent off 2 boxes last month. You're not allowed to send more than 5 kilos, by the way.
Okay.
It has to be under 5 kilos and less than $100 value, which is usually the case.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah. And, anything that can be done. I was talking to this very nice journalist. His name is Angel Ferreira. And I said, it's true that we brought in dozens of kilos of these strings, and, to me it makes me feel good. But what's really a drop in the bucket of what this country needs, beyond like antibiotics, which like they have a problem with sometimes also. But he said, you don't understand. It's like a gesture. It raises our morale. And so in that, it's very important to us. So like everything helps because they're basically excluded. They've got like an economy that's closed, and yet they're very serious, like intellectual people. They're well educated, and they know the value of a string and what you could do with a string.
Oh, and the music from Cuba is respected right around the world.
Yeah, absolutely true. And so in that way, you know, I also love the beaches there, and I love going to Havana, which I think is a wonderful city. It's got so much history. It's evocative to me for my poetry. And they like the style of poetry that I do, like with singing, because they have a class of musician called Troubadour, which basically is Troubadour, which is what I am. So we sing about romantic issues and political issues. And the Cubans, interestingly, in their society, you see, like in North America, it's a doctor and lawyer is king of the society, and then in England, it's like House of Lords and Oxford University. In France, it's Académie Française. In Germany, it's history. And for the Cubans, it's poet. And I said, why is that you hold them so high? I said, and they told me, a serious poet speaks for many.
Has a greater voice.
Has a much greater voice, because you speak for the thoughts of many. So I try to do that. I don't always succeed, but in any event, we put it to a melodic line, and even though my music is very different from Cuban music, they appreciate my tone.
Well, I think this is a wonderful thing that you're doing, J.D., and spreading the word. And I hope that our listeners who are so inclined will take up the challenge.
Yeah, you can see the address on my site, which is www.J.D.Sage.com. And I'm glad Ian's feeling better.
Yes, he's slowly but surely making his way back into full mobility.
Right.
Yes.
So I heard.
Yeah. Thanks again, J.D.
Oh, you're welcome.